So I'm going to introduce Dr. Hyun, and I'm just really excited that she was able to make room in her super busy schedule to meet with our club. And actually, I've really enjoyed everyone that we've had from that part of the world, because we don't have to worry about them staying up till really late like we would from someone from Europe. And it's their next morning over there, which is great. So, and I was just, like I mentioned, I was really impressed when I heard her on the Mushroom Revival podcast. I love all the different innovations that she has brought about and has been involved in the plant and the fungal world and the biomaterials world, and how excited she is about it. It was great to actually we like to do a tech test before the meeting, and it was just wonderful noticing all your energy. And it's notable with all the different awards that you've won, so many actually, being like awarded Australia's leading STEM scientist and science communicator. That's so important for our world today, to get people excited about science. And I'm excited. I have to also say I'm excited because you're also another Asian female. And I love that you've been so successful and gotten to pursue these passions, doing all these different research projects. And we had a little glitch in our schedule, and she was meeting with people that are doing projects going to the moon, and had to shuffle something around for them. So she had just to say a few things. She's gotten her PhD from the University of Melbourne and has postdoc positions in the United Kingdom, in Italy, and in Australia, in many different projects. And she's done research in plants that fight cancer, in all different kinds of agricultural waste that can be put to use to create food and products. And I really just am looking forward to hearing from her today. And I'll hand it over to you, and you can share your screen and start your talk. And the way we're doing this is, please type your questions in the chat. And then when they get to a certain level, I may actually read them to her, but I'll be monitoring the chat. So go ahead and put any questions you have.
And it's good to turn off your video to preserve bandwidth. And then at the end of the meeting, we can open up all the screens again so she can see who's talking and asking questions, because she's going to have questions for us at the end of the meeting also.
Right. And if you haven't already muted yourself, that's great, just to keep the extraneous noise off the audio stream. So thank you, everybody.
First of all, thank you, Cornelia, for a wonderful introduction. It's really nice to talk to like-minded people. And I really love mushrooms, and I do believe in a better planet, healthier, greener, and more sustainable, hopefully. So that's been the foundations in my work, and I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the things that we've got going, and really want to pass it on to the general public so you can share the passion and get excited about the things that we're doing in science. So today's talk is about the fungi, because I think everyone here is a convert already. But just to give you some insight to what I do, so that we can actually get this conversation going and build this community. So as Cornelia said, I teach at the University in Melbourne, and I do have a lot of projects all over the world, and quite a few different projects. But what we do here is acknowledge country. So where I'm at is from Melbourne, and I'd like to recognise the traditional owners that are custodians of our land here, and respectfully recognise them. And it's also a segue, because I've got a picture here of orchids. And my research or my interest all started with orchids and looking at the mycorrhizal fungi. And I've got pictures here of Caledonian orchid, which is a spider orchid, and Glossodia, this beautiful purple orchid there. And one of the things that Australia is a biodiversity hotspot for orchids, but we're losing a lot of them due to deforestation and collection and clearing. And so the research that I started was in conservation, looking at fungi and the soil health to promote these orchids and produce populations to put them back into the declining populations. But along the way, I also saw a lot of waste. And I have a lot of projects, and I started to connect to my traditional heritage, which was in Asia. And along the journeys, I saw a lot of waste being produced. But the thing that they did really well was actually upcycling of the waste. And one of the things that they put it towards is fungi and mushrooms. And like I said in the pre-chat before, just casual chatting, was that these fungi, the diversity of these mushrooms in these Asian cultures are amazing. And you don't see any button mushrooms there, but they have things like shiitake and oysters. And just some of the research that we actually started doing from these tours that I had in Asia was really to help them find out the medicinal benefits. So from my field in Basidia mycota, so fungi has quite a diversity, and this is just to give you a background in terms of how diversity is and where I've come from and how I've evolved to be more of a biomaterial specialist. So we started working the Basidia mycetes, so the mycorrhizal fungi that increase the surface area, the very underdeveloped roots of orchids. And then most of the fungi that we probably eat are in both Basidia mycota and Ascomycota. So our truffles, for instance, our cordyceps, all that sort of stuff that we really love. And there's also other groups that isn't really explored well, and fungi are one of the main kingdoms that we have that are really understudied and really underrepresented. And we know very little about it, but we suspect there's several million species, and of that we only know a few thousand and characterize them in detail. But that one of the key things that they do really well is produce enzymes. And that's so they can break down all the organic waste in our environment. So essentially, they're the recyclers of our planet. And without them, we'd be swimming in our own filth. So we really need to give homage to these amazing group because they have so many applications in our environment and where we live. And one of the things that I tell my students is to use technology. And I think one of your speakers was talking about your tech and AI using all that. And I actually have quite a lot of mushroom apps and plant apps on my phone. And this is a screenshot of my phone. And I use it. And I think Cornelia also has it. So why not get involved when you go on a bushwalk on a rainy day, and try and identify things on your travels, because that helps you to engage with your environment, but also caters to your love of fungi. And for some people, they may not be into fungi, but I'm thinking, well, some of them you'll be familiar with, but a lot of my friends who aren't into mushrooms, when I tell them how expensive it is and how important it is, it changes their mind completely. They're a bit snobby that way. So I tell them about the zombie fungus that I think I did a quick search, and I've got US dollars listed here of how much they're worth in terms of per kilo. So I think some people are growing some mushrooms at home, but to buy these and produce it commercially, they're really quite an entrepreneurial project. And I encourage everyone to share your ideas and how you grow things and make it happen so that you can actually not only have a revenue that is good for you, but you can also have the benefits in terms of medicinal and health benefits. So some of the things that I've worked with are both the cordyceps, so the zombie fungus, the caterpillar fungus, as well as truffles and oysters, lion's mane, and shiitakes. Earlier on we also had morels, and we were able to make quite a few of these fruit in culture, which is the mushrooms that we eat. So I'm going to only highlight a few because I think we've got limitations in time, because I wish I could show you all my pictures and all the research I've done over the 20 years or so in mushrooms and fungi. But I'm going to only focus a few things, and we've started to look at nutrition as well as more higher end benefits. So I've got just some of the main mushrooms that in Asia they eat. So gnocchis, oysters, maitakes, and shiitakes. And you can see I've got little red arrows in terms of the really high benefits that they have, especially for vitamin D, for instance, which is all about our bones and our absorption for calcium, for instance. So as we become older and age more, we're not going to have, our bones will become brittle if we don't absorb in or take in this calcium. So this is a precursor for our calcium. We've also got, so mushrooms also have niacin, which is for our energy, and also pantothenic acid. I think it was somewhere over here. Wait, let me put a little arrow. I think it's, let me just write a little arrow. Yeah, okay, would help. So it's actually quite beneficial for us in terms of not just in terms of the amounts of nutrients it has, but if you can look at the numbers there, it's huge. So for those who don't have sunlight, I think someone was in Boston that's snowing. You can't go outside and see much of the sun. And when I was in England doing my postdoc, you could really feel the lack of sunshine compared to places in Australia. But it's that fine balance of having too much and you get skin cancer, or not enough so that your bones suffering. You start taking the calcium from your bones. And I think mushrooms is a really good opportunity for us to use that in our diet as we get older and have more higher needs for calcium. We also looked into cordyceps, which are the zombie fungus or the caterpillar fungus. And these traditionally come from Himalayas and they grow out of the insects. And we call it zombie because insects are usually in the ground and they don't really seek light, because mushrooms, as you know, don't really need light to grow, but they need it to release their spores and spread themselves. And so what it does is it goes into the insect and grows as mycelium and makes them want to seek sunlight. So they behave differently to what they normally would. And once they get the sunlight, so the fungus grows through the head and then spiralates, it kills it. And it's quite spectacular. And there are quite a few great videos online to show you this, where these insects are stuck on a leaf with a spike of fungus coming out from it. And this is one of those that we saw in tissue culture. So in the past, you've had to actually collect the cordyceps from the caterpillars, and they're worth quite a lot. So we're talking about, I think it was about $100,000. But we can actually grow them now. So I helped with some of the research in Asia to grow them in tissue culture. We're also reduce the need for the actual insects. So the story behind the cordyceps was actually really quite interesting. And I wanted to share with everyone because I thought this was really great in terms of how the impact of social media helps to actually promote different foods or different research or different science that we have. And traditionally it's used for Chinese medicine, but I think it was some athletes from China that won, I can't remember when it was, their race, and they were suspected of cheating because they outperformed everyone in such a short time. And the coach came up forwards and said, no, it's because they had this cordyceps that increased the energy production, actually helped them to for endurance performance. And so that's what happened. And so it became very popular. And when demand increases, guess what? The price also increases. And that's how it came about, that it became really popularized. And especially in the Chinese culture, this is now considered as one of the top medicinal products that you can take for endurance, especially for sports. So while we were in Asia, we helped with the cordyceps industry produce different products. And this is some of the examples I'm showing you, including my own wine. So what they do is they brew the cordyceps and then ferment it as a beverage. And they also grow the cordyceps in the glass, so you can actually see them and add the the beverage inside it, but you can also get dried forms. And this is one of the presents that the company gave me for helping them develop this without using insects. So it's much cleaner and using agricultural waste like rice hulls and rice grains that are commonly grown in Southeast Asia. So this is what it looks like. And usually if it was a live presentation, I'd all give you a little sip. It's not so much like a wine. It's more like a brandy because it's about 40% alcohol. And everyone who goes away from my meetings is actually very happy and a bit more rosier, which I think is a good thing because it changes their perception of mushroom. And we also had an opportunity to work with lion's mane, and we're going to conduct some animal trials shortly, maybe next year, looking at the health benefits for brain health of lion's mane. And we've actually got some mushrooms here, some of the industry growers have given me so that we can actually use them. So we try and support the growers and the farmers and look at the medicinal applications and especially how to prepare it so consumers like us can actually respect the organism and treat it the right way. So this is some of the fun. Let me see. Oh, it's not moving. Hold on. Oh, there we go. So some of the research from others that we've looked at, and we're going to base some of our studies on this, is they extract it using different methods. So this is the raw method. Let me see if I can hide this. Can I put this to the side? There we go. Hold it. There, to the side. So some of the extractions, so you get a water extraction as well as different ethanol and alcoholic extractions. This is the water extraction. You can see on the pictures on the right here, so this is the water extraction. This is just a normal control. And what they show is these are the neurons. And with all of the extracts, or almost actually A1, A4, and A5, you can see that not only are the neurons sparking much more, so it means the signalings increase, but you also have a lot more neurites, so that's the brain cells. And they've got this graph, right, I'll move this again here on the bottom, they've got a graph that is almost twice or 3 times the improvement, not only in the length of your brain cells, but also in the number of them. So this is a really great representation that science can actually show you how beneficial these mushrooms are. It can explain some of the benefits when you're eating them. Okay. Why is it going? Maybe it's just slow. I'll just get out and go back in because it's a bit slow. Let me go again. Hopefully that works. Okay. So one of the other mushrooms that we looked at was Ganoderma. And this is one of the farms that we visited in Asia that they were trying to produce. And they have acres and acres of these farms and these little hot houses. So in Asia, because humidity is there and it's warm enough, there's not much carbon input that's required. So electricity is not there, heating's not there. They just have growers that come through and pick these daily. And we help them to develop some of their products, including they call it wine, but it's really more very hardcore liquor. And if you drink these, and I don't have any of these left, but they do make you very happy, as well as some powdered and tablets like we talked about. Sometimes you might need more than is needed. Now, those were the raw products for health and medicine. We also started doing projects looking at alternative ways of using the mushrooms to cater to our current needs and our future needs. So we looked at sustainable packaging, and I had a few students working on this, and they produced these containers, and we had a mushroom grower, and I'd really like to have a big shout out to Petra Truffles, who was a company that commissioned us to do it, and they also invited us out to a meeting dinner at one of the 5-star restaurants, some Michelin-star restaurants, and it was a 12-course dinner with truffles, and I loved it. It was really enlightening in terms of seeing how truffles are produced at a gourmet level, and that knowing we actually helped to produce it. So what they wanted, so Petra truffles. What they wanted was to have packaging to send truffles from Melbourne, so Australian Melbourne, to Europe, because our fruiting seasons are the opposite to Europe and probably to America as well. So it means that it collects a high premium because it's not available in Europe. And so they wanted a packaging that was not only breathable but sustainable. So at the end of it, we can just throw it out and compost it. And I'll show you what they look like here. And this is exactly the same one in the picture here. And it was really easy to grow. You just have your straw or whatever waste you have, and you put your fungus in, put another container on top, and we also had a lid to control it. You can see this here. And this was created probably 5 years ago, and it's still there, raw in its raw form. And what we ended up doing is at the end of it, we put it into gardens where my orchids were growing, put some water on, and it broke down and fertilized everything. So it was great. And the truffle company was really happy. But we also tested it, and we found that our mushrooms, so these blocks that we created, were probably about 5 times more stronger than polystyrene, which is what is normally packaging these truffles to send off to Europe. So both in compressive stress, so pushing towards it, and compressive strain, so pulling it apart. Now, one of our really popular projects is looking at fungi as flame retardants. This is so to save lives, because house fires are a common occurrence, and apparently in the US, you have more than 350,000 house fires a year. That's hundreds of thousands of houses going up in flames a year, worth billions, if not trillions of dollars. But not only that, more importantly, it causes hundreds of deaths. This is people dying from not only smoke inhalation, but from buildings burning down. And the main causes are electrical and cooking, so where there's ignition points. Currently, we have flame retardants that are halogenated or non-halogenated, and both are quite toxic and unsafe to use. And they do retard some fires, but it's not that great. And if you survive the fire, you'll still have exposure, and it causes a lot of health effects, both in your brains, your endocrines, your reproductive system, immune system, cardiovascular system. And I can send everyone some references if you like to read up on that, but it's pretty grim. So what we did some experiments where the students decided to, well, let's burn some things. And our department was quite stressed about the whole thing, so we had to go take it outside. So we had a flame burner to some of our products. So on the right-hand side here, you can see our brick, which is full of fungi. It's all white. On the left-hand side is the extruded polystyrene, which is what we usually have in our cladding in our walls. And hopefully this video will work. So I'm going to press play. And you notice on the left-hand side, within about 5 seconds, you can see the smoke in terms of the flame coming out. From the right-hand side in our fungal brick, it chars, and it creates this layer, a protective layer, but on the underside, you can see the virgin material where the fungus is, that's white. It doesn't burn. And what you'll notice is that while the polystyrene starts to melt and lose its shape after 30 seconds, ours still keeps its structure. There's no flames, there's hardly any toxins being produced, and it actually burns really safely. So I've got a still shot on the right-hand side as a backup in case you wanted to see it in still. But you can see the structural changes, and we did a further test on it. See, and it's effective, so it's a flame retardant. It's safer, and it's really cheap to produce. And in more detail, we find that it actually produces over 1,000 times less smoke. And most fatalities when fires happen in our homes, is because there's too much smoke, we get inhalation, can't see anything, and we just fall down. But if we have 1,000 times less smoke, it means that we can actually escape. And 30 seconds may not sound like much time, but it could be the difference between you getting out of your home or a smoking car, and actually go into safety. There's actually less heat release, times for it to actually catch fire is much longer, and there's less carbon dioxide. So we think it's actually really quite safe compared to synthetic foams and engineered woods, for instance. It's also much lighter. So it means for the construction building industry, what we use at the moment is, for instance, plastics and particle boards. It's up to 7 times lighter, which means that you can put them into your walls, your framework, and it wouldn't add much compared to other alternatives. We also find that it's much cheaper. We're talking up to 31 times cheaper than a traditional brick. And what that means is us as consumers, we could build our homes 31 times cheaper. And I don't know how much prices are in the US to build a house, but if you could reduce that in terms of timber and bricks, this could actually be a really economical alternative. But the more important thing is it's safer. Oh, here's some values compared to polystyrene and particle boards. We also wanted to look at advanced composites, so more advanced applications, not just for our homes, looking at planes and automobiles, especially as we have more EVs, so electrical vehicles on the roads, and actually creating more of a protective layer as well as mycelium on the inside as well as on the surface. And what we found was that, yes, it was fire resistant, it was lightweight, especially for a lot of these industries. And not only that, but it's quite strong. So we created these things that are much better than the bricks and tiles that we produced. And we came up with a leather which was more flexible. And I've got a sample here to show you how flexible we need. So we have a leather that's like this, that you can bend and it's quite valuable. And this one hasn't been, nothing's been done with it, so you can. And we also have a paper like this. You can bend it like that, and it actually just drops like paper. So what that means is you don't need to build things from the beginning. You can actually have the wallpaper, glue it on, and then paint over it. And that will give you a layer of fire safety ad hoc. So you don't need to go from the beginning, you can add it at the end, which means us as consumers, it's got a lot more versatility in applications and usage. But what we wanted to do was look at industries that could use this, like the planes. You don't need to create a new plane again. Just go through and line around the turbines or where the ignition sources are to make sure that it's got that extra layer of protection. So we've published quite a lot of this, but I thought I'd convince you further with some videos, and we did test run and it worked, so bear with me. So the top one, we've got our epoxy polymer, which is our control. That is what is normally bought and used. We've got then our fungal sheet here in the middle, and then we treated it even further. So we manipulated it so that it can produce chitosan, which is the outer layer or the hard layer of shrimps and crabs. So I'm going to play it now and hope that works. I hope everyone can see. So we put a flame to it, and you'll notice that straight away the epoxy polymer here burns, and there's lots of fire. Well, our fungal stuff, it only burnt a little bit. There's a little bit of smoke, but the smoke is actually quite clean. It's carbon dioxide and water. While our treated sheet, no matter how much we put the flame to it, it just wouldn't catch. Now, we actually tried to use the same flame torch, and you can see that our epoxy polymer is still burning, but our fungal sheet, we've had to try and put the ignition source to it several times, and it still does not, it burns a little bit, but stuff extinguishes itself, which is amazing. And I, as a researcher, look at these videos and I think, we've done a great job. And if you weren't convinced already, this should pull you over the line. I don't know how long it runs for, but it should almost be finished. So you can see where the smoke is, how it comes out. There's no smoke in this one. We had to burn it several times. Well, this one we had to blow it out with a thing to get it. But if imagine your home, this was your home, which one would you like to be? I don't think there's any doubt what you would like. So we've got some still pictures in terms of what we've produced. So this is our control here that burned really fast. When we started putting fungi to it, it reduced it by a lot more. And when we actually did our additional treatments, it just self-extinguishes itself. Very little smoke, hardly catches. And what that means is safer product. So we did some of these burn tests and we found it was much safer. And what it produced, so this is our epoxy control, that what it produced was water and maybe some carbon dioxide. So you can see the things here. And when we did some more tests, we found that it took longer to ignite. There was less spread in the fire. And as a fire performance index, it was better performance compared to glass. Now, glass you would think doesn't burn that much, which is pretty much the premium product. But if you look at some of these numbers here, it takes a lot longer to ignite. It doesn't grow as much in terms of the fire, and it's got a very high fire performance. And how it does it is it creates this char, which is, I think, here. So our char, so you'll see the epoxy doesn't really have a protective layer. And this char is the chitosan, which is the shell of the shrimps, for instance. And these are at over 850 degrees. So that's what that 850. That's very extreme temperatures. And if you can think of it, this is a product that would really be important, especially we have so much electricity around us and fire sources. And my last topic, and I think I'm going to finish soon. Cornelia, how am I doing with time?
You definitely have plenty of time, actually.
Okay, then we have more time for discussion. My last product these sound absorbents, because we thought, well, fungi so far it's done everything we wanted to do, but we also wanted to see what other applications we have. Now, we lose a lot of productivity from lack of sleep or from interrupted sleep. So essentially what you want is REM sleep, which is uninterrupted sleep. But sometimes, remember, when you're sleeping, a car might pass by or a cat might jump the fence, or you, if you're like me, you might actually hear the computer beeping or your phone beeping. Now, our hearing perception, so the range of human sound, is in the very low range of hertz. So around this one here. So mostly the sounds that we have, if you stop now, you could probably hear a buzz where you are. And that can come from either your lighting, refrigerators, computers, anything. And that's usually in the 0 to 2000 hertz. And when we're sleeping, it's that sound that really causes us interrupted sleep. And what we know, like, for instance, I've got a picture here, which I'm going to get my pen back on. What we've got here is refrigeration sound, typical refrigeration sound. It can go up to 10,000 hertz. So from here to here. So a lot of the noises that we have in our homes are in this range. And what we wanted to do was see if our products can actually reduce that background noise that causes us interruptions in our sleep. So we grew these bricks, and I think I've got them somewhere here. Got some bricks here, like this. So it's pretty solid. And we grew them, and they look like they've just got full of fungi there. And what we do is we put it through this machine called an impedance tube, where you've got your material here, and you have sound coming from the source here. You've got microphones here that pick up the sound and microphones inside here that picks up the sound that goes through. Now, what you don't want is sound to go through, because that means that the sound hasn't been absorbed. If you get sound only coming back, it means that your material reflects the sound, so it doesn't let it to go through. But if you don't get any sound coming through or coming back, it means it's absorbed, which is what you want. And what we did was we looked at different mushrooms, and one of the criteria I put forwards for my students is that it has to be edible or medicinal mushrooms, not pathogenic fungi. That way, it's not only safe for the producers, but we can see the benefits of it from current mushroom producers, or we can work with them to upcycle their waste. So we looked at Trametes, pleurotus, and Ganoderma, and we looked at different agricultural wastes that are quite abundant in Victoria here. So we had rice hulls, which are the skin of the rice grains that we usually throw out. And rice is one of the main staple diets of a lot of cultures, especially in Asia. So if you think of the millions of tons of rice grains that you eat, imagine the shell that protects it that's thrown out into landfill. We also looked at wheat straw, which is what is very low value. It's just grass that's been dried at the end of the agricultural season. We also looked at sugarcane bagasse. Now, I don't know in America if you have these sugarcane drinks. We had quite a few set up because it was meant to be quite healthy for us, but it's full of sugar. But what they do is that once you drink it, the remaining leftovers are actually thrown out. So we actually got the students to collect that and grow that with our different fungi. And the way this works is on the left-hand side, you've got a scale of 0 to 1. 1 meaning it's total absorbance, so 100% sound absorbance. And on the bottom scale is the hertz in terms of the frequency that is absorbed. And what we found was that on the oyster mushrooms, the wheat straw was fantastic because at some wavelengths, it's absorbing 100% of the sound. And for most of them, it's more than 50% absorbance. And it's quite consistent. So we compared that to normal, I'll just move this over, normal controls, which is this polyurethane foam, that's this thing here. So we have a commercial product that we go to our hardware store, and you can put this in your tiles or walls for a lot of gaming places where they don't want to hear the sound, for instance, and they have a virtual experience. So that's trending at the moment. And so sound is actually quite a big thing for a lot of rooms to reduce vibration and sound from outside coming in. We want to have a really great experience. And we compared it, and the best that it did at the very low frequency was probably about 20 to 30% absorbance. So it still does a little bit of absorbance, but not much. And the most it can get is about 65% absorbance, which is great. And it's the best product we have out there. But when we compared it to our oyster mushroom things that's grown on wheat straw, you can see the comparisons that at the low frequency, which is what our background noise music is, it's actually more than double. And it overall, at some frequencies, it can absorb more than double. So we think it's actually really good, especially for our future needs as we become more urbanized and everyone's living closer and more densely populated, especially for people who, for instance, live in apartments where you can hear your neighbors through the wall. I mean, this could be the solution. And I don't know where you are, but where we are, we're next to the airport, so you can hear the buzz of the planes as they go past. Imagine you wouldn't have that anymore if you could sound or insulate your home to soundproof. Oh, hold on, what's going on here? I think I've got a lag base. Oh, yes, so more than 3 times better absorbance, especially at the lower frequencies, which is what we have problems with. Here we go. So some of the publications for those who are interested in reading up further our work, which is very scientific, and they're all very well received by the scientific community. But what I'm finding is a lot of the general public is very keen to buy the stuff. Everyone wants to put the wallpapers in. But what I would really like to do, and I'd really like to talk to listeners, is the demand has to come from you. Because at the moment, I've talked to a lot of industry partners, especially builders and some of the biggest construction companies, and they love the idea, but they come back to me and say, but we're used to what we're doing. And the building construction industry hasn't changed for the last 100 years. It's still the same way it was. We're still using wood, we're still using plasterboards, and there's no incentive to change. So I'd like us, to inspire you to think about what you want to demand, because demand drives change. And I think it's really neat, and that's why I do a lot of the communication stuff, because our science wouldn't get anywhere without public support and public demand. So with that, I think there's a bit of a lag phase. I'm going to thank everyone for your attention and open up for questions. I'm not sure what's happening with my screen, but
So
Okay.
you can probably go ahead and exit. There you go.
sorry, I did want to acknowledge before
Oh.
I finish some of the students and our industry partners who have been pivotal for the work we do, and now I can open up. Sorry.
Great. We have a number of questions that were posted in the chat. I think I would be happy if people actually went ahead and opened up their video and went ahead and asked the questions in person. I know, Michael, you had a question about recreational foam, like surfboard, and then you were actually anticipating. No, she then started talking about sound deadening. I don't know if you have more questions about sound deadening.
Sorry.
She totally started right on that, as just as I sent the question, that about the sound deadening and also temperature insulation properties, so you could use it in buildings, cars, any kind of product where you want to do those.
An amazing product. So we have got studies looking at heat absorption. So we're building at the moment these sunshades for power refueling stations. So not only is it going to shield them from the heat, so absorbs the heat, but it's going to be going through a lot of weathering experiments. So we have quite a few things looking at more external structures, but with not only strength, fire resistance, and durability. So rain and all that. So there's a lot of, look, we've done a lot of experiments. I've only just shown you a few highlights, but it's just an amazing group of organisms that seems to, it depends on which one you work with. Some of them have better sound absorbance, some of them have more fire resistance, some of them have better strength. So it's really about experimenting not only the fungus, but the agricultural waste that you put them with. Because once they actually, like we said, we did a few treatments to the original product that actually increased the chitosan conversion. And so that actually produced more charring. And we think a lot of that charring could also be useful for other applications and purposes. Does that answer your question? On top of stuff?
Michael? Oh, you're muted now, so. Is that a yes? Okay. And then, let's see, I know Emma and Gabe at Gowan Valley Farms were asking about the cultivar for your sound absorbance blocks. So it sounds like you answered that to a degree. You were saying you've done different ones for different purposes. And how do you keep the blocks from producing fruiting bodies?
Well, we had some that we ate. So we just chopped off the fruiting bodies and just used the mycelium, because the mycelium, and this is where we want to work with the mushroom industry, because the stuff that we're interested in isn't the stuff that you eat.
Right.
What happened was most of these experiments were at the start of COVID. And what happened was we had about 4 hours to put all our cultures into the fridge, and we couldn't get in Melbourne. We had the longest lockdown compared to everyone in the world. Something like 4 months for the first one. And so we had four hours to put everything in the fridge. When we came back 4 months later, they broke the glass jars.
Wow.
It was everywhere. So,
Oh my goodness.
they're that strong. But what you can do is also put them in containers that are very tight, so they don't have fruiting bodies, because they do need a space to grow out. And the great thing is, we have a lot of 3D printing where we can actually make these containers to contain that and reduce that fruiting body.
Okay.
Left on its own, it will grow through everything.
Right. And I think Ecovative does a heating process, which is how they keep the fruiting bodies from happening. But I think different people have different processes. So I know there was a question about Cordyceps militaris versus Cordyceps sinensis. There's a number of papers under Google Scholar. I know that Emma posted one of them. Would you have any comments on the difference between the wild gathered versus the cultivated Cordyceps?
We haven't done much research, but I think for sustainability wise, it's not beneficial to keep collecting from the wild.
Right.
Especially for the demand that's needed. If we keep collecting from the wild, we're going to take this away from its natural resource. Here in Australia, we have a lot of native mushrooms that we work on because we do believe in the local economy. So a lot of people who grow things that are not native to the area, you're adding in a lot of things that aren't normally found there, and that may not be sustainable or the best way to go forwards. That's where some of my research focuses on what we find is common in that area, because we don't want to spend too much time, effort, resources to ship things in, to grow things, to ship it back.
Right. No, that's great. And
yeah,
it's been a problem with the yellow oyster. They thought because it was a tropical oyster, it was not going to become invasive, but it's spread all through the Midwest and the Northeast now because it hybridized.
Yes.
So I see that Gary Gilbert, who's a friend of ours, who's an architect and a builder, he has a question in the chat. Would you like to actually just unmute and ask your question, Gary?
Hi there. Thanks for the talk.
But you're from Boston with the snow.
Yeah, sometimes with global warming, we see a lot less of it. No, in wallboard or sheetrock, I'm not sure the terms you use down under, but it's a highly used material that's very heavy, extremely heavy, and it serves different purposes in terms of sound deadening and fire rated protection, particularly fire rating. Have you interfaced with the industry, particularly in terms of fire rating materials? Or wallboard would be highly useful.
So I think your wallboard is our plasterboard, and we did look at that, and it's much better. Like I said, not only for weight, fire resistance, as well as the cost. I don't know what sheetrock is.
The same thing.
Oh, okay. Yes. So the plasterboard would be ours then. And when I went to a few, because I've had a lot of industry approach me, and they love the idea, but then they go away and they think about it. There's a lot of changes that are needed that I think I'm too ahead of my time. So, for instance, people are used to working with plasterboard. When I come to them saying, I've got fungal boards, they look at me like, oh, is it going to grow mushrooms out of the walls? You know, so there's an educational thing that I have to go through. It's in terms of, no, it's already dead. And then it's just very novel. I mean, I think I'm talking to a group who's familiar with mushrooms. But then when we get into the technicality of fungi as a kingdom, it becomes a bit mystical. And then when I talk to builders who aren't really biologically minded, it just blows their mind. And we have conversations that isn't necessarily to do with the benefits, but it's to educate them on a biological material that could be used to replace a manufactured material that they love and use. That's been there for hundreds of years, not just in terms of the idea, the concept, the mind, but also the training and the contractors. Does that make sense? So the challenges have been to convince industry that this is something they need to go towards. And if there's no government support or incentive, because there is none, there's no one saying you need to change. So for builders, they're into the business of building, not innovations, not science, support or stuff.
Could I suggest, I think there's a lot of room for demonstration projects. There's a lot of people that are building with heavy timber skyscrapers, for example. They're trying to do demonstration projects. It would, I guess the biggest hurdle, it would seem to me, would be, is it commercially producible? Because if the cost is down and the weight, therefore shipping, is down, and you could produce enough of it, it would seem to me you're ready for some sort of demonstration project.
I think so too. I think we're on a cusp of major changes. I'm definitely a big disruptor by putting this forwards in terms of saying, hey, what you've got here, because our comparisons that we've done, the science behind it, is with industry standards. So we're not comparing with one and the other that's in the lab. These are industry standards. And you're right, the problem is commercial scalability. Because I, at the university, am not into big, well, for one, I don't have the room to grow all this stuff and store it and to build these things. And that's why we've looked at different versions. So you don't have to, because to build a whole house with fungal bricks would need a lot of space for me to store, for people to purchase and order. So that's why we went into the wallpaper, because that's more versatile. It's got less area it requires for me to send to. But to make it commercialable, it has to be driven by an industry or an industry partner to drive it, not academia. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm curious because I know that in Europe, there are a lot of initiatives in place where companies in the building industry wants to become green and sustainable. Is that not a thing in Australia at all? And it's actually in place here too.
Yeah, I think Australia is very behind. And I've actually talked to quite a few European researchers, and they actually came to visit us a few months ago. And we're in the process of writing a few Horizon grants to implement this. And I think Australia, one of the limitations is translational projects. So we take research projects into the commercial scale. And that's why America is really good, because you've got a better pathway than we do. From what I'm hearing, like you've got a lot of business setups. Europe is really advanced in their sustainability. Like when I was talking to the researchers there, they've already built homes with these bricks, so they can get it done. They connect really well with industry, and there's a lot more support than we have in Australia. And that's where I'm happy to talk to these things, going to America and visiting, and happy to give conversations, because I think it's a much better. Well, for me as a researcher, it's a much easier pathway, because here there's too many hurdles. There's no support, there's no funding, there's a lot of challenges, and I have to deal with things that I shouldn't have to, like, talking to government and policymakers. It's, I just want to build these things. I know how to do it, and we've got a way to scale it up, but there's also got to be that network. So Gary, if you want to meet with me and get me to talk to some builders, we can set something up, and I'd love to be involved. I really believe this will save lives, and it should be a future product that we can improve or even make it scalable, so everyone can purchase it.
I'll just leave it by suggesting you contact US Gypsum, one or two of the big manufacturers. Go ahead and contact them. They probably do have an innovative materials department or something like that, because they know one of their biggest problems is the weight of their material, of their
Right.
board.
This
It's
would
very
cut down.
Do you have an actual person? Because when I ring as a random stranger, I get into the query department. Just goes in circles. So this is what I'm saying. Unless I know someone who's keen to support, coming as a random stranger, it doesn't really lead to much impact or trajectory.
You have
Right.
credentials, and there's product development departments, and sell your credentials. They'll listen, maybe.
Well, maybe, but look. My experience has been I've gone to our there's a hardware store, a very big chain called Bunnings, and I went to them and I said to him, "Can you link me up to your research or advertising marketing team?" And it went in circles. They said, "Oh, we don't really deal with people like you." Sometimes they say you're lost, but it's quite hard. Like I said, if you don't know, and even when I do meet the CEOs, they're not the ones they've got stakeholders who, drive the direction. So this is where I'm going to put it to the audience to link me in with someone who will be able to help me get there. Because as a random stranger just selling my credentials, they think I'm lost. That needs to be found. Even if I say, here's my card and my CV and stuff, it just becomes, oh, you're just a researcher. It's very pie in the sky thinking, and it's innovative, it's great, we love the idea, but we're not even sure how to start.
So one actually opportunity, which I may be able to connect you to as well, is that earlier this year, I was speaking at a conference designed for people that are in so it's called ESG. So these are people at major corporations that are in charge of environment and accountability to society and their environmental social governance. So there was an amazing project that Microsoft is doing, taking places on the electrical grid where it's dirty energy and then going in and creating jobs and replacing with renewable energies. And so there are some really hopeful departments in each of these major companies who are in charge of looking at things like this. And I didn't meet as many people in the building industry, but the person that organizes these conferences that I was at, it was continuing to go on through the rest of the country and organize more of them. And he is coming back at I think next month. So I'll definitely be able to share your presentation since we recorded it and see who he thinks you can hook up with, because those are the people in each of the companies that you'd actually want to talk to, because it's their job to find greener solutions. That's what they were hired for. So I think, this was the other reason I was excited about your presentation. We do have a few other questions in the chat. I think Michael said his connection's not very good. So he was asking about whether this could be a boon to blown insulation industries, like in skyscrapers, perhaps. Do you have anything that you've worked with that could be blown into and adhered to surfaces? So that was his question. And I have another question about termites.
Well, I haven't done that so much. It's more of touchable materials. We do have other materials that we're working with that I can't talk about too much now, but not so much for insulation. It's more being the fire stuff that's been very popular because, especially as we come into summer now in Melbourne, where there's a lot of bushfires, it's becoming quite, well, even in winter where we have a lot of candles.
Oops. My sound, I didn't hear what that was. Did you hear it, Sam? Or you have a
So,
question?
no, I haven't worked.
I have a
with it, no.
question.
Okay, I had a little glitch as to what you just said. I don't know if that was my computer or Okay, well, go ahead, Sam.
Well, so I just looked up online, and do you know the Builders Academy of Australia, which is in Melbourne? They
Um,
they are like a trade school, building school, and a training center in the city of Melbourne. And I'm wondering about approaching them to do a small project or something, because they are, will have younger people who are doing training and learning to do construction, and maybe work with them to build like a small, not a livable home necessarily, but like a little hut, or, doing something that displays your products.
At this stage, it's more about getting industry to support it, because at the universities, they're quite limited in not only space but funds. And that's where we want to actually start industry to investing in it or combining with us to build this as an industry rather than just to, because we can create we're going to have we've got prototypes. So we've got these solar shades out in the middle of nowhere and all sorts of stuff. But at the university, it's and academia is probably not the way forwards, because it's all about just, because we've had exhibitions as well of all these fungal products, and especially the tech schools. I'm pretty well linked in with the tech schools, so that's the technical schools. There's a lot more hands-on approach and a lot more tradies coming out from there, but it's not something that I think is going to be the best path forward. So I have talked to them.
Okay.
But thank you, Sam. Yeah. Should I go and answer some of the questions?
Yes, there's another question about, apparently termites are very attracted to foam insulation. Do you have any idea about this mushroom-based insulation and termites?
Earlier on, we did some tests, but it wasn't that great, and we put it to the fire as well. We focused on the fire, but the termite. Well, we didn't really look at termites. We looked at insects, and when we actually composted them, it didn't really. Well, most insects didn't really like it, and it was really great as a composter.
Mm. And then Kathy is asking whether, with the low cost of these buildings, whether this could actually be an answer to homelessness.
But yeah, that's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
Not only is it heat absorbing, fire resistant, and if you can grow it on a small scale, not like those big mansions that we have that needs a lot of bricks. Yeah, absolutely. And we're working with the our microfabrication department, where they do a lot of 3D printing and actually combine it with other things, like, for instance, concrete, to make it more scalable. And some of the things that we've started is combining it with concrete to make it more resistant to weathering, because concrete is not very giving and it cracks, so They call it concrete cancer. And with a lot of agricultural and biological material in these synthetic or man-made products, it actually makes it more flexible and versatile. So hopefully we'll have some of that, but I think our fire stuff has been most popular because we do need better.
Yes. Does Australia have anything like, it's called Habitat for Humanity here, started by Jimmy Carter, but it's basically building homes for people that have low income or no income. Is there any initiative like that in Australia at all?
Yes, we have social housing, and I think our government, different states have different policies, and there's been quite a lot of new social housing being built, but that always comes with its own problems that I don't really do much with. But like I said, with this sort of stuff, you have to talk to the builders at the front end, and that's not where I'm getting to at the moment. So there's quite a lot of hurdles.
And then Chris is asking if you have patent protection.
Well, my department, my research and innovation department would like me to do it. They've always contacted me, but it's quite an intensive process. So I've kind of put it off until I have more time. But yes, we should, but at the moment we don't. And I'd like to ask everyone actually, do you think I should have a patent? Because I'd like this to be available to everyone. Having patents restricts things.
Right.
You know, we have quite a few small startup mushroom companies, and they really struggle with the patent stuff because it is quite costly to do. And it really does restrict a lot of things, not only in terms of having others to also produce it. So you could have franchising, but that's not really my focus. My focus, I mean, I love the science behind it and I want to see this to the end. And when the patent team contacts me, my eyes glaze over and I have no interest.
Well, part of what I can see with you is that you have so many ideas. I can see where you're not as interested in, this is my only idea kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do notice that Emma also from Gowan Valley Farm, she put in the address of someone, if you can capture that out of the chat, or we could send it to you, but Luke.
That's Luke one there?
Yes.
Yes, I've written it down, yes. But I
Okay,
will
good.
contact them. That'd be good.
Oh,
That
Yes,
was
Sam.
Gowan Valley Farm, so thank you.
oh, and Tan, would you put your email address in the chat, please?
And Michael was also making a suggestion about contacting the sustainability branches of different engineering colleges. We have one here, Georgia Tech, and that they would also
Yes,
be interested.
I'm very closely aligned with our engineering team and our technical schools, so that's already there. And like I said, it's not just me doing all this work. There's other collaborators, and we've got great engineers on the team who aren't as vocal as I am. And I think they're also quite overwhelmed when they go to a lot of the building meetings, and they send me to the site, like the quarries. For instance, earlier on, I had to get all these glass vines to put in the fungal material, and I turned up, and a lot of the crew there said to me, "Am I lost?" And they sent me back, and I had to go ask one of the engineers to go instead because I did look very out of place.
So many assumptions. Okay. Great. Does anybody else want to ask any questions or have any suggestions or ideas? I know it looks like Kathleen, you also mentioned the possibility of on-site growing, but I suspect that would be difficult.
It would be, and especially to look, most growers will know that you get heaps of contamination if you don't do it right. And even if you do it right, sometimes you will have contamination. And a lot of people who want to grow this, if that's not your main business, you can get away from you really quickly. So if you're growing it on site and your main purpose is to produce a building, having the growth stage as well creates many challenges. So that's where I think looking at it from a feasibility perspective and scalability options, working with the mushroom industry where they throw away a lot of that waste is a much better way. So it's already there. You don't need to grow it yourself. You don't need to worry about contamination. You don't need to source the agricultural waste, the fungus, all that stuff. And the brick is there.
Right. I'm curious too, with your sun structures that you mentioned, do you have an additional coating on top or is it all just mycelium?
Well, there's several. Well, we're still experimenting, and it's got to go through a weathering test. So I can't really talk too much about it because we're working with 2 industry partners, so both a solar company as well as a fungal company, and it's going to be outside. So maybe you could have me up in a follow-up session, maybe in 2 or 3 years. And this is where I'd say with the research, it takes a long, long time. So not only are we building it, we're creating it, testing it, refining it, testing again, and publishing it. So I don't think you really see that this has been more than 10 years research behind it. And even though the fungi only take a couple of weeks to grow, it's a lot of refinement behind the scenes. So with the sunshades, well, the students is meant to start next week, but we've got prototypes that we created already, so we know what they're going to do. And it's going to be a modular design so that we can actually have them clip onto each other more like a replaceable tiles for a lot of the design aspects of it. But the results we don't know yet, so
Okay.
we can't tell you.
Right.
Watch this space.
Yes. So for keeping up with you, which of your social media, or I know you listed some things, and which is the best place to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so I'll just put my LinkedIn hashtag then. That way you can follow me if you like. And usually when I have publications, I put it there or some news or something. And that way you can see where we're going because we're always quite active. I'll just type it in, Tien Huynh there on LinkedIn. So follow me or contact me through there, or if you have some contacts you'd like me to talk to, I'd be very happy to chat with anyone really. Specifically industry, if they're at a senior level that can help me to get some support, and then I can apply for either Victorian or Australian grants that will actually see this to the next stage, which is more the feasibility and scalability component.
Great. Sam, it looks like
And-
you have a question.
Well, how often have you been or do you go to Vietnam?
Before COVID, I used to go probably once or twice a year because I have teaching grants to go. But now it's probably 1 every 2 years.
Okay.
But I could always make a special case to travel because we have holidays all the time.
Okay. So I don't know if you saw in the chat, but let's see.
Earlier
Tom,
on, or
Tom put his email address in there. And Tom is our member, the one who lives in Seattle, who has gotten degrees in Vietnam with mushrooms and plants. And I don't know if you,
I can't see it. Can you send it to me, Sam?
yes. Would it be best to send it to you by email or just in the chat?
Oh, email chat doesn't matter because I can't see in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. It should come up in the chat right now for you.
Oh, okay. Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
And I know, Tom, you go to Vietnam 2 or 3 times a year.
You're muted.
You are muted, Don. So sometimes. Okay. Okay. But anyway, because I know you've done mushroom research in Vietnam. So I just thought it would be great for you two to connect. So okay. And your brother's still working with the cordyceps on kidney disease?
There's
Or-
Solomyces, the different.
Okay. Okay.
It is an endomopathogen fungus.
Okay.
So Darling actually put a notice in the chat about whether you've considered crowdsourcing platforms like Kickstarter. I know that takes a lot of work, so I imagine you're so busy that's not easy, but
I'm
Is
not
that-
sure that that's the best way. I think having a industry involved will have a long-term impact. Well, crowdsourcing, it means I have to be in charge of it, and maybe just for now, but it won't have anyone carrying the torch if I'm not there.
right. Okay,
But thanks, darling, for that.
well,
Okay. Is that kind of it?
I think so. So thank you so much for joining us.
Say thank you for coming.
Yes.
Welcome. And hopefully we can meet at some point in time next year, because I'll be in America and it's my first time to America. So I'm pretty excited. And if I can give a talk, I'm even more excited. I don't think I can bring any wine with me or this cordyceps stuff, but I'll see what else I can bring to share through customs. I'd hate to be pulled aside for bringing something I shouldn't, just because I'm so into mushrooms.
It's interesting, there's apparently less oversight about mushrooms than other things, according to other people we know that have traveled internationally, but
Interesting.
then
Okay.
again, you don't want to be the one to get pulled aside, so.
Yes, because imagine me on the news. Well, oh, mushroom expert brings in illegal mushrooms.
Not the kind of publicity you want,
Ironic.
No.
Yeah.
so. All right, we
Well,
are,
thank you, everyone, and have a lovely night. And you know how to contact me, and let me know if you have anyone I'd like, I can talk to, or talk to your friends. And hopefully we can see this on the shelves so we can purchase and be safer.
And
Yes.
we
Thank you.
will let you know when your video gets posted on a YouTube channel so that you can have it as a resource to encourage students and other people to go look at it.
Excellent. Thanks, Sam and Cornelia.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
What did I say? May the spore be with you.
That's right. May the spores be with you.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Good
Bye,
night.
everyone,
Or
and
good
look forward to
afternoon.
seeing many of you at the potluck. Some just arranged tonight.
Yeah.
Take
care.
Yep. And
And then we've also got Catherine Geyer, who's helped us previously with the potluck and probably will be helping coordinate things this time as well.
we've been communicating there.
Okay, great. So thank you for all your hard work and previous and to come. So appreciate it very much. And yes,
You know, just to remind everybody, this is a volunteer organization. And so all the help we can get is great.
yes. And I appreciate some newer members who at our last summer potluck were blown away by the cooking that our members do. It was like, oh, this is not an average potluck, is it? So I'm really glad that the mushroom world seems to attract foodies as well, which is really fun. So
Speaking of which, do you have Meg's? I mean, I guess I can email her and ask her to come to tonight's meeting or tomorrow or the potluck.
yes. So I know this is a difficult time of year for people to attend anything because there's so many competing interests. So I'm really glad all of you showed up. I have to admit, I heard our guest. I know there's probably a few other things we need to say before she actually starts, but I heard our guest tonight on a podcast, and I just got really excited about her and wrote her immediately and then invited her. So, so I'm glad that all of you can make it tonight, and I'm also glad that she's given us permission to record this meeting because we know we had a number of people who are very sorry they couldn't be here. So, Sam, we have some
Yes,
other
dear.
business because I know you're planning some workshops. Although I don't think you have the dates, but in
I'm
January,
working on it.
February.
We're going to be getting logs next week. So they'll be nice and ready and seasoned. And so we'll be doing 2 shiitake log workshops, one in January, one in February. All will be down in Scottsdale, Georgia, which is near Clarkston, which is near the DeKalb Farmers Market. And then I'm actually doing a workshop on a log workshop on March 2nd with at a DeKalb County soon to be park. It's where we did a walk earlier this year. It's out in the kind of, I think, Lithonia out that way. So if you can't make the January, February one, you could always consider going to that one. So I'll be sending out information in the next week or two. And if people are finding cool stuff, please send us pictures. And let's see, I'm working on a 3-club foray again, since we haven't been doing a Coney for the last 2 years, but we try to do a foray once a year with the Asheville Club and the South Carolina Club. So I'm working on doing that for sometime in the late summer, fall. And let's see. Yeah, if anybody hears, is listening to podcasts or sees things and they think it would be a good speaker for our club, please share the information with us, because we love to reach out and get people, get interesting people so we can really share great knowledge with our club.
But maybe you already noticed, I just noticed that Ton Tran is here from
Oh.
Seattle.
Oh, he is, because I wanted him, because I talked with Dr. Huynh some about him. And so I was wondering if they might share, go ahead and chat each other so that they can share their information, because
Yeah, Ton set up his camera and then he walked away. He's iPhone 23, so.
Okay. Because she goes to Vietnam and he goes to Vietnam, so.
Right. Great. Excellent. Ton is a member of our club who lived in Athens and then moved to Seattle, but is very active in developing some products that he's going to be selling. So I often talk about him in my medicinal talk because of his excellent recovery from cardiac artery occlusion with using wood ear mushrooms and getting a clear artery scan fairly recently. So, all right, Chris is asking, where do we send pictures? So
email them to me at the treasurer@gamushroomclub.org.
yeah, why don't you type your address in the chat?
I will. And Michael Ye is joining too. Yay.
Okay. So any other business I know we've mentioned things in the newsletter about NAMA being on the West Coast in Oregon on Halloween weekend.
Washington, dear.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Washington State. And to get the best deal on that, you basically want to join the North American Mycological Association at the beginning of the year. And then that allows you to be able to go to that conference. And there'll also be another NAMA conference in Arizona in August. And they're actually planning another trip to Mexico. They don't have the dates for that yet, but that was a totally amazing experience.
And we might go back on that one.
Well, so those are all things worth looking into. So, all right. And then the other part of the potluck, I don't know if you mentioned, but we also hold a auction to raise money for our club. So any mushroom paraphernalia, services, other things that you want to donate and have people bid for, we really appreciate that. Any things that you've made. And some of you saw Carmen's really cool knitted mushrooms. So I think it's actually, unless you have anything, dear, it's time to introduce Dr. Corinne. So
Actually, just one thing would be is it's nice every now and then if we get emails and things from people just sharing what you appreciate about being part of this club, because it's something that we like to share in the newsletter. And, you know, it's a little tooting our own horn, but we deserve it. And our club deserves it. I mean, we have an awesome club.
we do. I see Tan on the screen now. Tan.
Yes. Hey,
We were talking about you because Sam wanted to connect you with Dr. Huynh. So
Ton, we're talking to you.
okay.
Um,
I think all right.